Hey guys, welcome to TGS with me, Johnny. Today we're going to be talking about Spanish gunmakers of the modern era. A few of them don't exist anymore, but they've gone out of business so recently that they basically still exist. Or at least new stocks still exist throughout the world. Spain is a difficult one and has a bit of a dodgy reputation from a lot of pretty awful guns they made back in the 50s. But they were made to a price because that's what the world was calling for. So now, generally what you'll get out of Spain is more or less all great quality, although there's a few exceptions to that which we'll talk about. But we're going to kick off on a really strong foot with a company called LARM, which stands for La Armeria de Madrid. Madrid Arms, we'll call them, but LARM, Gun and Rifle Makers. So LARM just build best guns, is a real simple way of putting it. There's nothing basic on their thing. Their side lock side by side with a slightly rounded body is beautiful. They do a slightly lesser exciting set, which you can see a pair of there. They're just a beautiful London-esque gun, but made in Spain. Price point wise, probably one of the most expensive. They also make a range of Boss styled over and unders, which, well, I think most Spanish over and unders now are done on Boss actions, to be honest, but they are beautiful. Next, Armas GARBI, not indeed short for garbage, as one British gun from a loving friend of mine once said, but Armas GARBI, G-A-R-B-I, each of those letters is the initial of one of the people that set it up. Back in the 50s, 5 of the best gun makers in Spain came together to start Armas GARBI. GARBI were one of the first Spanish gun makers to really focus on their best guns and drop everything else. So you'll rarely find a bad GARBI. Certainly, of the modern era, they don't exist, and pretty much up to this point, they're one of the best Spanish makers out there. And they still exist, which is quite a big deal for a Spanish maker. Another maker that still exists is Grulla. You'll see Grulla made guns for lots and lots of other people. And you'll see when you take the action flats off of lots of guns, you'll see a little stalk stamped in on there. That stalk is the Grulla stalk. So Grulla's offerings basically go, we copy 3 major makers, all of which are London lock styles, all of which are beautiful. And we do variations on the theme. They do a beautiful colour hardened one. They do, what is it, Churchill, Purdy and Holland locked guns. And they are very, very nice. And again, all of their guns are best guns. They don't make anything substandard, or at least nothing substandard by their terms, at least. And of course they make a bolt action as well, just to back it up, because they can, and it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. However, my favourite of all is the Celtic. They're certainly just really, really nice about how the knotwork is laid out on the plates. It's a beautiful thing, I think, anyway. Next is one that isn't around anymore, but is a relatively recent loss. That is Arietta. If you want any more information on a lot of these guns, by the way, we have done independent videos on them, sort of looking at the histories of a lot of them. But Arietta went out of business a few years ago. They just felt that strain like a lot of Spanish gun makers do, and competing in that top-end market at the moment in side-by-sides is not wise. The whole Spanish market, never like the Italian market did, dove in on the over and under train, and as such they haven't really got into that mass production over and under market that does that. Not to say they don't make some amazing over and unders, which we'll get into later. Anyway, Arrieta have made some amazing guns. We've got a few examples here, but for the most part they don't exist anymore, which is a shame, although there are a lot of their children about. So next is one you probably haven't heard of, that is Armas Ignacio Zabalaga. They make some guns, and they make some actually really nice guns. For example, this one here has a long top strap that's really beautiful that goes up over the nose of the gun. They do some lovely side-by-side shotguns, they do some amazing express rifles, they also do over and unders as well, but they look significantly less exciting. I didn't even know these guys existed until this morning, so excuse me for not knowing a lot more. What I can tell you is they do seem to look a lot more Spanish than a lot of other makers that seem to copy the London styles. They are much more of a Spanish flavour to a lot of their guns and engravings, but nonetheless a really nice gun. Next up is Kemen, and Kemen's quite a big deal because the King of Spain shoots a pair of Kemens. More importantly, the Kemen is like your Perazzi for people in the know. It is it's the Spanish Perazzi. It's a boss action gun. The KM4 is the one I'm talking about, is their entry-level gun. However, you don't have to be stuck with a KM4, which is the most popular one you'll find here. They do a titanium actioned boss gun, which the likes of people like Fabry will say is, you know, this big deal they do, but actually they've been doing it for a little while by the look of it. They sort of pioneered that. Or maybe they didn't, who knows? Nobody really tells the truth in gun making. Everyone claims what they want to be theirs, but it is nonetheless an amazing and beautiful titanium gun, and they also do steel versions of the same. But for those of us who just like, you know, bashing clays and don't have the sort of budget to go into that top end, the KM4 is probably one of the best mid-level clay guns out there, if you can find one that isn't old and isn't dead. But Kemen haven't been going very long, I think only like 30 years, so there aren't that many old nasty ones about. there you go. Kemen. Go check them out. It wouldn't be a Spanish guns video without AYA, of course, probably the best known of all Spanish gun makers. They've been around for some years in various forms and have probably got the strongest presence in Britain, at least, seeing as they've been imported and marketed here better for longer. They make a box lock still, the Model 453 and Model 42 and loads of different Model 4s actually, but it's mostly the number 2s, number 1s that you'll see. However, it's this round lock plate gun that I found most exciting out of anything they've done, and it was kind of groundbreaking and it really is beautiful. I hope you'd agree. Yeah, it's real yummy. But it's not just that, they also do over and unders as well. They do a boss action over and under as well as their old style Merkel over and under as well. To be honest, I've never seen one of their box action over and unders. I'd like to though. Maybe a trip to Spain's in order. So next up is Armas Parkemy. Parkemy, most people have heard of from a rather nasty little 410 they did. A lot of people bought back in the day, and it'll just have Parkemy stamped in it with a hammer. However, they also built some other guns, and they still exist today, and that's quite a big deal actually. They're quite a lesser known thing and seem to hit the domestic market most. However, it's this gun that I thought I wanted to bring to your attention, amongst others, to be honest. A high carbon fibre ribbed side by side. What a gun! I need that in my life. More importantly, these Parkemy guns are really, really affordable. They do a really nice little over and under as well that's not big money. It looks, to be honest, like an old Nico or an old Winchester action gun. It's really quite smart. It's really quite smart. And for €1,000, yeah, I think in my trip to Spain, I think I need to stop by Armas Parkemy. What's more important or interesting about Parkemy as well is they own Victor Sarasquita. So some of their guns are branded Sarasquita, but they're all built new. But I believe they are owned by Parkemy. But I'd love to be corrected on that if anyone actually knows more. My final little taste from Parkemy is this little hammer gun. It's just beautiful. They seem to actually be one of the widest spread, from everything from a real basic thing all the way up to some really tasty stuff. I quite like that. And I really don't know why they're not in the UK, because actually marketing European made guns for about £1,000 that aren't crappy is quite nice. So maybe it's just that we don't have a taste for Spanish guns anymore. But to be honest, or maybe it's the fact that they're just a bit too Browning-like, and Browning, if they brought them to this country, might throw a big hammer at them. And there is one more gun from these guys, and that is the Especial. And I can't not share it with you because it's so unbelievably ornate that it does count as art, even if it's not your British taste or tasteful or whatever you want to call it. I think it's just a beautiful work of art. I'd probably own it, and when people say I'd own it and wouldn't shoot it, I'd shoot a boss all day long. I'd probably own that, and I'd probably shoot it as well, to be honest. So before I go any further, I should say if you're enjoying this video and enjoy a few of our videos, please subscribe and perhaps consider becoming a member to support the channel, and you know, you get a few other little tasty videos thrown in as well. But before I go on any further as well, I should say there are a few air guns in this because Spain has a really big airgun manufacturing presence. The first which I'll talk about is Norica. Norica make PCPs, spring guns. They make the Thor, which was a cool thing with a load of multicoloured stocks. I think they're one of the first people to sort of go down that multicoloured plastic stock route, or multicoloured dyed wood stocks, because they do it on that Orion as well. Interesting. Actually really interesting guns. Are they great? No, not amazing. But they are reasonably priced, or at least they are in Spain. But that's by the by. Moving on. Next is Cometa. Cometa is an airgun manufacturer again. They make a PCB called the Lynx, but most people will know them for the Fenix 400. The gun that many people started on, sort of the poacher's choice throughout the 90s as a cheap throwaway spring gun that most people sort of figured they could make powerful quite easily without the investment of a Virag. Interestingly enough. Moving on, Thunder Fire Nipples. Ardesa. Where would we be without Ardesa, the company that makes Thunder Fire Nipples? They make replica guns, replica gun kits. I think it was probably the first Spanish gun I owned. It was an old Navy muzzle loading percussion pistol thing you put caps on, made by Ardesa. Brilliant company for making some replica stuff. It's not maybe the best of quality, but it is extremely reasonable price. I think some of their kit muzzle loaders are like a couple €100. Bargain. So next up is Bergara. In the last few years, Bergara really has boomed, in this country at least. They are a great rifle. They used to be barrel makers before. They are now a common or garden bolt action. What they do nicely is they spec their guns really nicely, very modern. They don't sort of leave anything behind. It's quite a condensed range as well, so it's not too confusing. There's a lot of things I like about Bergara. There's a lot of things that I don't, not really fussed about Bergara. The HMR I think was one of like those first things that everyone went mad for because it was the tactical hunter crossover. Really smart gun. But they're all smart guns. I mean, most bolt action rifles are really accurate now, so you're only buying for your own personal preference. One thing about Bergara, as you'll notice, is that owners seem to think they're the best thing in the entire world and will let you know about it. There you go. bit like 6.5 owners. Imagine a Bergara and a 6.5. That'd be like the double whammy of telling you how brilliant their tool was. Moving on. Where would we be without MAXAM? MAXAM's quite an important one. It is not a gun maker, so it's a slight deviation, but they do own Ely Hawk, which is a British cartridge company. And in fact, this is just a general shout out to all cartridge makers in Spain, because there is a lot of them, a lot of which we get imported here that are quite reasonable. But MAXAM have been producing that BioWad, and they're kind of ahead of the game in terms of eco shooting, which I think is great personally. And they have a really cool video on their website that you're currently watching now, or a condensed version of. Go and check them out. And, well, they may not be British, but that doesn't mean they're not good. Maybe that does. In fact, I can't believe I've just said that. Moving on, and we're going to talk about another collaborative Spanish-English company, and that is Gamo. The fact that Gamo is not even owned by the British or the Spanish anymore is by the by. But what is true is that they own BSA, which is a British company, so their presence is kind of felt in England, in Birmingham, the BSA factory. And they are obviously connected. Gamo make basic PCPs and springers, and one of the biggest spring gun or airgun manufacturers in Europe. Probably the biggest airgun manufacturer in Europe, or used to be at least. They're great. They're like the ultimate starter gun. I think in my life I have sold more PT85s and seen more people have fun and sort of break their gun virginity with a Gamo than anything else. So they definitely deserve us to shout out, even if they are just an airgun manufacturer. Next is one that also doesn't exist, and this got bought out by Arietta. This is Pedro Arrizabalaga. Great guns, bought out by Arietta, that when it became Arrieta and Pedro Arrizabalaga. Arrizabalaga. Once great man once said to me, it's amazing how many people shun Spanish guns when they can't even pronounce them properly. So, yeah, Pedro Arrizabalaga makes some beautiful guns, or made some beautiful guns. Unfortunately, they don't exist anymore. As I said, they were bought out by Arietta, and then Arietta went bust. So it's a bit of a shame, to be honest. And I believe there was like somebody who tried to bring it back, but, well, we'll see. The name might reoccur in the next few years. Who knows? Either way, Arrizabalagas are probably some of my favourite, certainly only in their best format, probably some of my favourite Spanish guns that I've seen and handled and shot. I had to go with the 20 ball one a few years ago, and I remember thinking, I say a few years, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I remember thinking, this is almost on par with a British gun. There you go. And that's quite an accolade from a die-hard idiot patriot. Next is Zabala Hermanos. So they are available new somewhere in Spain. However, the company no longer exists. So, and they went out of business not long ago. It used to be Zabala Hermanos. I don't really know. It's all a bit of a mess and a bit of confusion, and I could have researched probably a lot more into it. But I did find some for sale new. What that means, I do not know. So there you go. I remember somebody once said to me that AOA bought out the scraps that were left of Lorena Zabala and then moved into their building. But I don't know if that's true, because they are not actually in charge of Zabala spares or Lorena spares. So someone else is. There you go. One of those amazing things. Probably should learn Spanish. That would help a lot. Ugartehea still exist as well. That's quite a big deal. They still make basic guns as well. I think that's really quite exciting to me. So you have everything from the top end side locks all the way down to a basic boring box lock by a Spanish gun maker. And I like the fact that, again, Ugartehea don't really have a great big presence in the UK. But they are an amazing gun. I've always been a Ugartehea fan, purely based on the fact that they are rock hard. They seem to have, regardless of the age you buy Ugartehea, they're all pretty solid guns. I mean, very solid guns. Maybe not that exciting, but very solid guns. But they do a nice pretty side lock that's the top of the range. Yeah, it's not really in the same sort of league as others, but it's not ugly. It's not ugly, and it's a good usable gun if you want a good usable side lock. It's a Sparrow outside. With a bit of the cat's fur in its mouth. I don't think it's eaten it. I just presume it's off the floor. But okay, so, and that is pretty much it. But I will finish up with one left. One left that went bust now 7 years ago. Lanber. Lanber, the guns of champions, or the guns of straw baler champions. They were brilliant guns. Everyone should have started with the Zabala, or did start with the Lanber back in the day, not Zabala. Did start with the Lanber back in the day, and they were a great gun making company. Unfortunately, they just got too expensive for their own good, or at least got too expensive for their marketing capacity in this country. And again, the fact they were marketed as the same company as Beretta, and Beretta was only a few hundred quid more expensive than them, it really didn't help their fate in this country at least. But who knows what went on down in Spain. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been very exciting. I hope you've enjoyed. It's been a rather intense experience, but trying to keep this condensed so you actually watch the whole thing and learn a little about Spanish guns. Take care, goodbye, and, well, See you soon.